1:20 p.m. Dear. Less than 2 hours to go, Jordan said. Christopher let out a loud whoop. You do that again, we'll have 15 teachers coming through that door, Karen said, pointing. Is that what you want? Sorry, Christopher said, pouting and sucking his thumb. At that moment, Bastian and John burst into the room, both wet from the rain. Greetings, Earthlings, John announced with a formal bow. Take me to your leader. Give me a towel. Yo, John, Christopher cried. You finally made it. He stood and started to applaud. I thought you were sick today, Jessica said. Feeling much better, John said, bowing again. He shook his head, and water from his hair sprayed all over the place. Hey, quit that, Jessica yelled. I wrote a note for him, Bastian said. He skipped into school. Yes, Christopher sprang up to slap John 5. You guys smell like wet dog, Vicky said, wrinkling her nose. Thank you, John said, bowing for the third time. He strolled to the front of the room and fell back into Mr. Fab's empty chair. I wouldn't miss this for $1,000,000. John pulled out 2 bags of candy from his backpack and tossed them to Tim and Christopher. Party time, Christopher cried, ripping open a bag. You mean deer time, Karen said, pointing at the board. John laughed. You're kidding, right? Rachel closed her eyes and pictured Tommy Feathers during deer, reading with his face close to his book. He always hummed while he read. And he always hummed the same tune, the 1812 Overture. No way, Bastian said hotly. I'm not going to do deer or dare or dweeb or any other stupid thing. We shouldn't be doing any work. We've got no teacher. At this rate, we're going to get into the Guinness Book of World Wimps. Mr. Fabiano always does deer. After lunch, Karen said, as if that settled it. Now hear this, Bastian said. He cupped his hands around his mouth and spoke as if through a megaphone. I have an important announcement to make. Mr. Fab is not here. Repeat, Mr. Fab is not here. That's what you think, Tim muttered. I'm reading, Jessica said. Why? Bastian demanded. Because I happen to enjoy it, she replied calmly. Yeah, me too, Vicky put in. Some of the girls started pulling out their books. Look at this, John said, stuffing 2 pieces of bubble gum into his mouth. He held up a computer disk. Anybody up for playing a little Doom 3? Yeah, I do. I'm playing. Let me go first. Tim, Christopher, Robert, Corey, Jordan, Sky, Bastian, and John all rushed to the back of the room and crowded around the computer. You guys are so wicked, awesome, cool, Rhonda said. Fact, Christopher said. Go back to deer, Tim told Rhonda. Shut up, Rhonda told him. I feel sorry for you, Tim said. I really do. That's how deer time went. The boys played Doom 3, the girls read. Rachel looked over at Sean's empty desk. She wondered which one he would choose, the computer game? Probably, even though he didn't usually hang out with the other boys much. The room felt different, emptier now that he was gone. Rachel pulled out her book. She loved reading, but the whole idea of deer bugged her. Why cram reading into a 15-minute time block and give it a cutesy name like that? Why not just call it reading? It was the world's dumbest title. You didn't drop everything when you read. You picked something up. Still, reading was the best part of the afternoon, especially on a rainy day like this. There was a cozy feeling in the room when the whole class, including Mr. Fabiano, read their books together. Rachel picked up her book, A Beginner's Flight Manual. It was the most detailed book she had ever read on how to become a pilot. She read slowly, so she wouldn't miss a single word. Several steps are involved in earning a pilot's license. Each one requires many hours of practice. The next 3 chapters will cover the following areas. Chapter 8, Simulated Solo. Engineers have designed machines known as flight simulators to help train pilots. These machines are totally realistic with all the pedals, instruments, rudders, and throttles you have in a plane. Sitting in a simulator on the ground feels like you're actually flying in a jet or propeller airplane. A simulator allows you to experience flight conditions, takeoff, flight, approach, and landing in a controlled setting where you can't get hurt. Chapter 9. Supervised solo. This happens much later in your training. In this step, you can actually fly the plane under the guidance and strict supervision of an experienced pilot. Often the pilot will take off or land the plane, but allow you to fly for short periods of time. Rachel looked up from her book. The room had begun to turn bright. She looked out the window and saw that the rain had stopped and the sunlight was playing sparkling tricks in the new grass. For some reason, the sudden light reminded Rachel of her first airplane flight. She was 10 years old, flying to visit her father in New Mexico. The plane left in a heavy rainstorm, rose through thick clouds, and then burst through into the purest sunlight, the bluest skies Rachel had ever seen. Chapter 10. Solo flight. This is the ultimate goal, to fly on your own. 1:35 p.m. Exploration. Okay, guys, we better stop, Karen said. No, Christopher cried from the computer. I'm just about to kill this guy. We've got exploration, Karen said, pointing at the schedule. Tim and Jordan booed softly. Christopher began sounding a low chant. Boring, boring. Rachel sighed and slowly closed her eyes. As far as she could tell, exploration was just a snazzy word for geography, which boiled down to old-fashioned map skills. She dreaded the subject, and she suspected that Mr. Fabiano felt the same way since he scheduled it so late in the day. Not even a teacher like Mr. Fabiano could breathe much life into map reading, though he certainly tried to show his students how important it was. If you want to fly, you have to know how to read a map, Mr. Fabiano told her one time. Longitude and latitude. This won't take long, Karen said. She started passing around the photocopies. There's just one worksheet, and then we're home free. I bet we can knock it off in 20 minutes. Where's the legend? Right over there, John said, pointing at Bastian. Very funny. It's true, John said smugly. He's the legend because this is his last day of school. I'm gone, Bastian said. I'm history. Have a nice life. Wah! Christopher cried, furiously rubbing both eyes. Goodbye, Jasmine said coldly. Now where's the map legend? Do I have to spell it out for you guys? John asked, pointing at Bastian. It's his last day. We have to do a rock ritual. It's not on the schedule, Karen said doubtfully. Forget the freaking schedule, John cried. He's leaving. This is our last chance. Fact, Christopher put in. For a second, nobody spoke. I guess you're right, Karen said reluctantly. Mr. Fab probably would have put it on the schedule if he'd known it was his last day. It just seems weird to do it without Mr. Fab, Jessica said. Map skills or rock ritual, Missy asked. Which way should we go? Should we vote? What do you think, Bastian? Vicky asked. Bastian was looking out the window. He's thinking about Hawaii and all those hula girls, Tim said. You bet, Bastian said. He was really thinking about Barclay. Flying alone across the Pacific, the largest ocean on Earth. The flight would leave tonight at 6 p.m. Okay, who votes for a rock ritual? Karen said. Everybody raised his or her hand except Jasmine and Jessica. Opposed? Karen asked. The class stared at the two girls, but Karen said, go get the rocks, Bastian.